A human fighter attended in Queen Trener wedding and became kings. Captain Marcus Chen stared at the golden envelope in his hands. The material shimmered with colors that didn't exist in normal light. He had seen many strange things in his 5 years as a fighter pilot for the human defense fleet, but this was different. This was an invitation to the royal wedding of Queen Zylara of the Trener Empire. "You're actually going?" Lieutenant Sarah Park leaned against the doorway of Marcus's quarters, her arms crossed. "Those crystal people hate us. They think humans are just violent monkeys who got lucky with spaceship technology." Marcus turned the invitation over in his hands. The writing shifted between languages as he looked at it, finally settling on English. "I saved the Queen's niece 2 years ago. Remember that pirate raid near the Helios station? I remember you almost died doing it," Sarah said. "But since when do the trainers care about debts to humans? Apparently, this queen does." Marcus placed the invitation on his desk. "Besides, how often does a human get invited to the most powerful empire's royal wedding? It might be good for human-Trener relations." Sarah laughed. "Or it might be a trap. Be careful, Marcus." 3 weeks later, Marcus's small transport ship entered the Trener home system. The planet Trener Prime hung in space like a massive diamond, its surface covered in crystal cities that caught and reflected the light of 3 suns. Marcus had never seen anything so beautiful or so intimidating. The palace made the planet look simple by comparison. It rose from the ground like a mountain of pure glass, each tower reaching toward the sky. Landing platforms floated around it, held in place by technology Marcus didn't understand. His ship was guided to a small platform near the base of the palace. Marcus stepped out wearing his best uniform, the one with all his medals. He felt immediately underdressed. The landing platform was filled with aliens from across the galaxy, all wearing robes made of light armor that moved like liquid and jewelry that hummed with power. A Trener guard approached him. The guard's skin looked like pink crystal, and his eyes glowed with a soft blue light. "Captain Marcus Chen?" The guard's voice sounded like music. "Follow me. The Queen wishes to see you before the ceremony." Marcus followed the guard through hallways made entirely of transparent crystal. He could see hundreds of rooms above and below him, all filled with wedding guests. Everywhere he looked, aliens stopped and stared at him. Some whispered to each other. Most looked at him like he was dirt on their expensive shoes. The guard stopped at a large door, carved with images of Trener warriors. "Wait here." The door opened, and Queen Zylara stepped out. Marcus had seen her once before, during the pirate raid, but he had been too busy fighting to really look at her. She was tall, nearly 7 feet, with skin that looked like purple crystal. Her hair floated around her head like it was underwater, glowing with soft light. She wore a simple white dress that somehow made her look more royal than any crown could. "Captain Chen," she said, her voice warm. "Thank you for coming. I know this must be uncomfortable for you." "Your Majesty," Marcus bowed the way he'd practiced. "Thank you for inviting me. Your planet is beautiful. Please, walk with me." Zylara gestured down the hallway. "I wanted to thank you personally for saving my niece. Princess Zara speaks of you often. She says you fought like a demon that day." Marcus walked beside her, very aware that every eye in the palace was watching them. "I just did what anyone would do." "No," Zylara stopped and looked at him. "You risked your life for someone from a species that has treated yours poorly. That is not what anyone would do. That is what a good person does." They reached a massive balcony overlooking the main ceremony hall. Thousands of guests filled the space below. At the center stood a tall Trener warrior in golden armor. He looked like he could break Marcus in half without trying. "General Corvin," Zylara said, her voice suddenly sad. "My betrothed, the strongest warrior in the Empire. He won the right to marry me by defeating 500 challengers in combat. He looks strong," Marcus said, not knowing what else to say. "Strength is everything to my people," Zylara said. "It is our oldest tradition. The Queen must marry the strongest, so our children will be strong, and the Empire will continue." Something in her voice made Marcus ask, "But is that what you want?" Then she smiled sadly. "What I want doesn't matter. I am the Queen. I serve my people and their traditions." Before Marcus could respond, a servant rushed onto the balcony. "Your Majesty, the ceremony is about to begin. All guests must take their places." Xylara nodded. "Captain Chen, your seat is in the eastern wing. I hope you enjoyed the ceremony." "And Marcus? Thank you for asking what I wanted. No one has asked me that in a very long time." Marcus found his seat in a section filled with minor diplomats and low-ranking nobles. They all moved away from him slightly, as if being human might be contagious. He ignored them and watched as the ceremony began. The hall filled with music that seemed to come from the walls themselves. Queen Xylara entered, walking down a long aisle of crystal. General Corvin stood at the end, proud and powerful. Priests in robes that looked like living stars began chanting in the Trener language. Marcus watched, thinking about duty and tradition and the sadness he had heard in Xylara's voice. Then the priests brought out the ceremonial blade. It was beautiful, made of crystal that glowed with inner fire. They placed it on an altar between Xylara and Corvin. The priests spoke in English now, so all the guests could understand. "The blade of sovereignty, touched only by those worthy to rule." A servant carrying drinks passed by Marcus's seat. The tray tilted. A glass fell. Without thinking, Marcus reached out and caught it. His hand brushed against something cold and hard, the blade. He had touched the blade of sovereignty. Every light in the hall turned red. The music stopped. A sound like breaking glass filled the air. The priest's voice boomed through the hall. "The blade has been touched. Ancient law demands combat. The human must face the betrothed Oregon, die for his dishonor." Marcus looked at his hand, then at the blade, then at General Corvan, who was staring at him with eyes full of rage. "Oh no," Marcus whispered. The red lights continued to flash through the crystal palace. Marcus stood frozen, his hand still extended from catching the glass. Every single guest in the massive hall was staring at him. The silence was worse than any alarm. General Corvan moved first. He crossed the distance to Marcus in 3 long strides, his golden armor reflecting the red warning lights. Up close, he was even more terrifying. His crystalline face showed no emotion except pure anger. "You dare?" Corvin's voice was like thunder. "You dare touch the sacred blade on my wedding day?" The glass was falling. Silence!" The priest's voice cut through the hall. "The law is ancient and absolute. Any who touch the blade of sovereignty must face the queen's betrothed in single combat. The winner earns the right to marry the queen. The loser dies." The hall erupted in chaos. Aliens shouted in 100 different languages. Some laughed at the humans' foolishness. Others demanded immediate execution. Marcus looked desperately toward Queen Xylara. She stood motionless on the altar steps, her glowing eyes wide with shock. "Your Majesty," Marcus called out. "Surely there's another way." "I meant no disrespect. This was purely an accident." Xylara's voice was quiet but clear. "I'm sorry, Captain Chen. The law has stood for 10,000 years. Even I cannot break it." She looked at Corvin, then back at Marcus. "The combat will take place at dawn in the Colosseum of Stars." Corvan smiled, showing teeth that looked like glass daggers. "At dawn, human, I will show you why the trainers rule this sector of space. Prepare to die." Marcus was taken to a preparation chamber deep in the palace. The walls were solid crystal, and guards stood outside his door. He wasn't exactly a prisoner, but he definitely couldn't leave. A servant brought him food and water, but Marcus couldn't eat. He sat on the bed, his head in his hands, trying to figure out how his life had gone so wrong, so quickly. The door opened. Queen Xylara entered, alone. She had changed from her wedding dress into simple robes. "You shouldn't be here," Marcus said. "Won't this make things worse? Everything is already as bad as it can be." Xylara sat across from him. "I want you to know that I believe you. It was an accident, but our laws exist for a reason. They keep our empire stable, even when they're about to kill an innocent person." Xylara was quiet for a moment. "Corvin has trained his entire life for combat. He has defeated over 500 warriors. He has strength enhancements, energy shields, and weapons built into his armor. You are a good pilot, Marcus, but tomorrow you will die. So why are you here? Marcus asked. To tell you that you can yield before the combat starts. You will be exiled from Trener space, but you will live. Your honor will be damaged, but you will see another sunrise. Marcus thought about it. He really did. Living seemed like a good option. But then he thought about going home, about everyone knowing he had run away because he accidentally touched a sword, about the message it would send to every alien species that still saw humans as weak. No, Marcus said. I'll fight. I didn't survive pirate raids and fleet battles just to run away from a wedding gone wrong. Zalara smiled sadly. You are brave. Foolish, but brave. She stood to leave, then paused at the door. The arena provides weapons. Choose wisely. And Marcus, I truly am sorry. Dawn came too quickly. Marcus was given light armor and escorted to a transport ship. They flew up from the planet's surface into orbit, and there, hanging in the black of space, was the Colosseum of Stars. It was massive, a ring of crystal and metal floating among the stars. The floor was transparent, showing the planet turning slowly below. Thousands of seats surrounded the arena, all filled with spectators. Millions more watched from across the Empire through holographic broadcasts. Marcus stepped onto the arena floor. The transparent surface felt solid under his feet, but looking down at the planet thousands of miles below made his stomach twist. Weapons lined the walls, swords, spears, energy rifles, and things Marcus couldn't even identify. General Corvin entered from the opposite side. His golden armor gleamed, and Marcus could see energy shields flickering around his body. The general picked up a massive energy hammer that crackled with power. The priest's voice echoed through the arena. The law is clear. 2 warriors enter, 1 warrior leaves. Fight until yield or death. Begin. Corvin charged immediately. Marcus barely rolled aside as the energy hammer smashed into the floor where he'd been standing. The transparent crystal cracked, but didn't break. Marcus grabbed the nearest weapon, a simple metal staff, and held it defensively. Is that all, human? Corvin laughed. A stick against a hammer? This will be over quickly. They fought, and it was immediately clear that Marcus was outmatched. Corvin was faster, stronger, and his armor absorbed hits that should have hurt him. Marcus's staff cracked and then shattered against the general's shields. A backhand strike from Corvin sent Marcus flying across the arena. He crashed into the wall, feeling ribs crack. The crowd roared with approval. This was what they wanted to see. The human put in his place. Marcus struggled to his feet, blood running down his face. He grabbed another weapon, a short sword this time, but Corvin's hammer shattered it in one swing. Another hit sent Marcus to the ground. He could barely breathe. His vision was going dark at the edges. Corvin stood over him, hammer raised for the final blow. You fought bravely for a human, but bravery isn't enough. Marcus looked up at the general, then past him at the arena itself. His pilot training kicked in. He'd spent 5 years learning to see patterns, to find weaknesses, to use the environment as a weapon. The arena wasn't just a floor. It was a complex structure with support beams, energy conduits, and pressure points. As Corvin's hammer came down, Marcus rolled aside and kicked at the nearest support column base. Nothing happened. Corvin laughed and raised his hammer again. But Marcus kept moving, kept striking at specific points around the arena. On his 7th strike, something clicked. A section of the energy barrier flickered. Corvin noticed too late. Marcus redirected an energy conduit, sending a surge of power through the floor beneath Corvin. The general's own shields turned against him, overloading in a burst of light. Corvin stumbled, his armor smoking. For the first time, the general looked vulnerable. Marcus didn't have a weapon anymore. His body was broken and bleeding, but he had something Corvin didn't. Experience fighting dirty, fighting smart, fighting to survive against impossible odds. Round 2, Marcus said, spitting blood. Let's try this again. The crowd went silent. They had expected a quick execution. Instead, they were seeing something they'd never seen before. A human who refused to give up. Corvin roared and charged again, but his movements were slower now. The energy feedback had damaged his armor's systems. Marcus used every dirty trick he'd learned in his years of combat. He threw dust from the cracked floor into Corvin's face. He used broken weapons as distractions. He made the general chase him until the larger warrior was breathing hard. The fight lasted another 20 minutes. Marcus was running on pure survival instinct now. Every breath hurt. His left arm hung uselessly at his side, but he kept moving, kept thinking, kept finding ways to turn Corvin's strength against him. Finally, Marcus saw his chance. Corvin charged one more time, his hammer raised high. Marcus didn't dodge. Instead, he dropped flat and kicked at the general's knee joint, the one weak point in the armor he'd noticed. Corvin's leg buckled. His own momentum carried him forward, and he crashed through a weakened section of the arena's edge barrier. For a terrible moment, Corvan hung in space, his arms grasping at nothing. Below him, the planet turned silently. One slip, and he would fall forever. Marcus crawled to the edge. Every muscle in his body screamed at him to just let the general fall. Corvin had tried to kill him. No one would blame Marcus for letting gravity finish the job, but that wasn't who Marcus was. He reached out with his good arm and grabbed Corvin's hand. The general was heavy, and Marcus's grip was weak. For several seconds, they just hung there. Marcus on solid ground, Corvan dangling over oblivion. Why? Corvan asked, his glowing eyes showing confusion for the first time. Because this was never about killing you, Marcus gasped. It was about surviving an accident. With the last of his strength, Marcus pulled. Other warriors rushed forward to help, and together they hauled Corvin back to safety. The general lay on the arena floor, staring up at the stars. The priest's voice rang out, uncertain now. "General Corvan, do you yield?" Corvan looked at Marcus, then at his own damaged armor, then at the hand that had saved him. Slowly, he nodded. "I yield. The human has won." The crowd exploded into noise. Some cheered, others protested. The priest looked confused, as if the law had never imagined this outcome. Queen Xylera stood in her viewing box, her hand covering her mouth. Marcus collapsed. The last thing he saw before darkness took him was medical teams rushing toward him. He woke up 3 days later in the Royal Medical Wing. His injuries were completely healed. Trener medical technology was miraculous. Queen Xylera sat in a chair beside his bed, reading from a datapad. "Welcome back," she said softly. "You've been unconscious for 72 hours. The healers said you had 14 broken bones, internal bleeding, and enough bruises to cover 3 humans." Marcus sat up carefully, testing his newly healed body. "Did I dream it, or did I actually win?" "You won." Xylera set down the datapad, which means, according to our law, you must marry me and become king consort of the Trener Empire. Marcus laughed, then winced. "You're joking." "I wish I was." Xylera stood and walked to the window. "The wedding is scheduled for tomorrow. The entire empire is in chaos. Half the nobility wants to find a way around the law. The other half says you earned the position fairly. There have been 3 assassination attempts on you already while you slept." "Wait, what?" "Don't worry, my guards stopped them all." Xylera turned back to him. "Marcus, I need to be honest with you. If you refuse this marriage, it will create a constitutional crisis. The law is absolute. You touched the blade. You defeated the champion. You must become king. If you refuse, it suggests our laws are meaningless. The empire could fracture." Marcus stood up and joined her at the window. Below, the crystal city sparkled in the triple sunlight. "And if I accept?" "I'm a fighter pilot, Xylera. I don't know anything about ruling an empire." "Neither did I when I became queen," Xylera said. "I was third in line for the throne, but my sisters died in a plague, and suddenly I was responsible for 300 billion souls." She looked at him. "Leadership isn't about knowing everything. It's about making decisions when no one else can. You've already proven you can do that." The coronation ceremony the next day was the most uncomfortable experience of Marcus's life. He wore robes that felt like they were made of light and weighted with responsibility. Trener nobles watched him with expressions ranging from curiosity to open hostility. When the crown was placed on his head, a circlet of crystal that floated just above his hair, he heard several aliens in the crowd hiss with disapproval. "I present King Marcus Chen," the priest announced, his voice lacking enthusiasm. King consort of the Trener Empire. The applause was polite but cold. That night, there was poison in his dinner. The next day, his transport malfunctioned. Sabotage. The day after that, a section of the palace accidentally collapsed near his quarters. Marcus survived each attempt, but the message was clear. Many trainers would rather see him dead than on the throne. "They'll keep trying until they succeed," Marcus told Zalara after the 5th attempt. They were in a secure meeting room, reviewing reports. "I've tripled your guard," Zalara said, "and I'm investigating the assassination attempts personally." "That's not a solution. That's a bandage." Marcus studied the star map on the wall. "Your people don't respect me because I'm human. I need to prove I can actually help this empire, not just survive in it." He spent the next week studying everything about the Trener Empire. He read histories, studied battle reports, learned about trade routes and diplomatic relations. And he noticed something troubling. "Your military reports," Marcus said during a council meeting. "They mention the Kryle's swarm attacking border colonies, but no one seems worried." Admiral Theron, the head of the fleet, laughed. "The Kryll? They're insects, literally. They've been a minor nuisance for decades. Nothing our fleets can't handle." "These reports show they're attacking more frequently," Marcus insisted. "And their tactics are changing. With respect, King Consort," Theron said, the title like it tasted bad. "You've been studying our empire for weeks. I've been defending it for 50 years. The Kryll are not a threat." Marcus looked at Zalara, who shrugged slightly. "The Admiral has more experience in these matters." Marcus wanted to argue, but he was already unpopular enough. He stayed silent and kept studying the reports. The pattern was clear to him. The K were probing, learning, preparing for something big. But no one would listen to the human who'd stumbled into power by accident. 2 months later, the Kryle launched their full invasion, and Marcus realized he'd been right all along. The first colony went silent on a Tuesday morning. No distress call, no warning. One moment, the colony of 15,000 trainers was sending regular reports. The next moment, nothing but static. Admiral Theron sent a battle group to investigate. They found the colony covered in a gray organic material that pulsed like it was breathing. The buildings were still standing, but every living thing was gone. When the fleet tried to scan the material, it suddenly erupted. Thousands of bioships burst from the surface, ships that looked like they were grown instead of built, all teeth and claws and hungry purpose. The battle group was destroyed in minutes. By the end of the week, 5 more colonies had fallen. The Kryll swarm had arrived in force, and they were nothing like the small raiding parties the trainers had faced before. These were organized, intelligent, and unstoppable. Marcus stood in the war room, watching the holographic display show red warnings spreading across Trener space. Around him, generals and admirals argued about strategy. Admiral Theron was shouting orders, sending fleet after fleet to confront the swarm, using standard Trener military doctrine. Overwhelming force and direct assault. "It's not working," Marcus said quietly. "What was that?" Theron turned on him, his crystal face darkening with anger. "Your tactics aren't working," Marcus spoke louder now. "You're treating the Kryll like a traditional enemy. But they don't fight like traditional enemies. They're a hive mind. They adapt. Every fleet you send against them teaches them how to fight better." "And I suppose the human knows better?" Theron's voice dripped with sarcasm. "You've been a king for 3 months. I've been fighting wars since before your species discovered spaceflight, which is exactly why you can't beat them." Marcus stepped forward. "You're using 10,000-year-old tactics against an enemy that evolves every single day." Generals shouted that Marcus was insulting their honor. Admirals demanded he be removed from the war room. Only Queen Zalara remained silent, watching Marcus with thoughtful eyes. "Enough!" Her voice cut through the chaos. "King Marcus, explain yourself." Marcus pointed at the holographic display. "The Kryll are a hive mind, which means they have a central command coordinating everything. But that's also their weakness. If we can disrupt their coordination, confuse their command structure, the whole swarm becomes chaotic and ineffective. And how do you propose we do that? Duran asked. We stop fighting them head-on. We use guerrilla tactics, hit-and-run strikes, false information. We make them think we're attacking from places we're not. We feed their hive mind contradictory data until they can't tell what's real. That's not how trainers fight, General Vex said. We face our enemies with honor and strength. And that's why you're losing, Marcus said flatly. The Krill don't care about your honor. They care about consuming everything in their path. The argument continued for hours. By the end, 3 more colonies had fallen silent. The swarm was getting closer to Trener Prime itself. The admirals refused to change their tactics. Marcus's suggestions were dismissed as human foolishness. That night, Marcus found Xylara on the palace balcony, staring at the stars where distant battles were being fought and lost. They won't listen to me, Marcus said, and people are dying because of it. You're asking them to change everything they believe in, Xylara said. For trainers, strength and honor in direct combat are sacred. What you're suggesting feels like cowardice to them. It's survival. Marcus moved to stand beside her. When humans first went to space, we were the weakest species out there. We survived by being smart, not strong, by adapting, not overpowering. Those tactics saved my species. They can save yours too. Xylara was quiet for a long moment. If I give you command of a fleet and you fail, they will have proof that human tactics don't work. You'll be exiled or executed, and I won't be able to stop it. And if I don't try, the Krill will eventually reach this planet. Then it won't matter what anyone thinks of me. Over the past 3 months, their arranged marriage had evolved into something like friendship. She had taught him about Trener culture, and he had shared stories of Earth. Now, she needed to decide if that friendship was worth gambling her empire on. Tomorrow, she said, I'll call an emergency council session. I'll give you command of 1 fleet. If you succeed, the military will have to listen. If you fail, I know, Marcus said, but I'd rather try and fail than watch this empire fall because everyone was too proud to change. Every noble, every general, every admiral stood watching as Queen Xylara made her announcement. King Marcus will take command of the 5th Fleet, she declared. He will engage the Krill swarm using his own tactical approach. If he succeeds in stopping their advance, we will consider adopting his strategies across all our forces. The nobles erupted in protest. The 5th Fleet was the smallest and oldest in the Navy, filled with outdated ships and officers who had been pushed aside for various failures. It was barely a fleet at all. You're sending him to die, Admiral Theron said. That fleet can't stop the swarm. Then we'll know human tactics don't work, Xylara replied calmly. But if they do work, we'll have a chance to save our empire. I accept command of the 5th Fleet. I'll need 3 weeks to train the crews in new tactics. You have 1 week, Theron said coldly. In 7 days, the Kryll will reach the Helix sector. If they take it, they'll have a direct path to Trener Prime. Stop them there, or don't bother coming back. Marcus met the Admiral's glowing eyes. 1 week is enough. He left the throne room with purpose in his stride, already planning. He had 1 week to teach a fleet of failures how to fight like humans. 1 week to prove that being smart could beat being strong. 1 week to save an empire that still didn't believe in him. The Kryll were coming. And Marcus Chen, the accidental king, was going to meet them with every dirty trick humanity had ever learned. The 5th Fleet was worse than Marcus had imagined. 30 ships, most of them older than he was. The crews were officers who'd made mistakes, captains who'd lost battles, and soldiers nobody else wanted. When Marcus arrived at the flagship, a battered cruiser called the Steadfast, the crew looked at him with a mixture of suspicion and resignation. Let me guess, Captain Vorn said, his crystalline face scarred from old battles. You're here to give us a speech about hope and glory before we die? No, Marcus said. I'm here to teach you how to win. On the holographic display, he showed them the Krill battle patterns. They move in coordinated waves because they share one mind. Every ship is connected to a central command organism. That's their strength, but it's also their greatest weakness. "We know this," Captain Vorn said impatiently. "We've all fought the Krull before. We lost because they outnumber us 10 to 1. You lost because you fought them the way they expected." Marcus changed the display to show human battle tactics from Earth's history. "When humans were developing space travel, we studied everything, from ancient warfare to modern strategy. We learned that the biggest army doesn't always win. The smartest army does." For 6 days, Marcus trained them relentlessly. He taught them hit-and-run attacks, how to create false sensor readings, how to make one ship look like 10 ships, or 10 ships look like empty space. He showed them how to retreat, not as cowardice, but as strategy, how to lead enemies into traps, how to fight dirty and win. The Trener officers struggled with it. Everything Marcus taught went against their training. But slowly, they began to understand. These were warriors who'd been cast aside, who'd already lost everything. They had nothing left to lose by trying something new. On the 7th day, the 5th Fleet jumped into the Helix sector. The Krill swarm was already there. Hundreds of bioships, pulsing with organic energy, consuming everything in their path. Long-range scans showed the command organism at the center of the swarm, a massive ship creature 3 times larger than Marcus's flagship. "All ships," Marcus spoke into the fleet-wide channel. "Remember your training. We don't engage directly. We confuse, we misdirect, we make them doubt their own information. Start the signal jamming." The 5th Fleet split into small groups, each broadcasting false sensor signals. On the Kryle's sensors, it would look like hundreds of ships were attacking from every direction. The swarm hesitated, trying to process the contradictory information. "First wave, attack pattern Delta," Marcus ordered. 3 ships darted in, fired on the swarm's flank, then retreated before the Krill could respond. The swarm shifted to pursue them, and 3 more ships attacked from the opposite side. Then another group from above, then below. Each attack was small, barely causing damage, but the effect on the hive mind was devastating. The Krill command organism couldn't understand what was happening. Its shared intelligence was receiving information from hundreds of bioships, all reporting attacks from impossible directions. It tried to coordinate a response, but every time it committed forces to one location, the enemy would appear somewhere else. Admiral Theron watched the battle from Trener Prime, his expression shifting from skepticism to amazement. "He's actually hurting them." On the Steadfast, Marcus watched the tactical display with intense focus. "They're getting confused. Now we feed them the false target. Captain Vorn, activate the decoy station." Automated stations suddenly came online, broadcasting signatures that made them look like Trener Prime itself, complete with defensive fleets and civilian traffic. The Krill command organism, desperate to understand the situation and eliminate the main target, analyzed the data and made a decision. It committed the entire swarm to attack the false target. "Now," Marcus said quietly, "all ships converge on the command organism. Everything we have." The 5th Fleet dropped their jamming and illusions. All 30 ships appeared at once, surrounding the now isolated command organism. The Krill realized the trap too late. Their main force was attacking empty space while their brain was exposed. The battle lasted 15 minutes. The 5th Fleet poured everything they had into the command organism. When it finally died, its massive body breaking apart in silent explosions, the effect on the swarm was immediate and total. Hundreds of bioships simply stopped moving. Without the coordinating intelligence, they became individual creatures with no purpose, no direction. Some fled into deep space. Others drifted aimlessly. The invasion was over. Marcus slumped in his command chair, exhausted. Around him, the crew of the Steadfast erupted in celebration. Captain Vorn approached, his scarred face showing something Marcus had never seen from a trainer: genuine respect. "You did it," Vorn said. "You actually did it." The return to Trener Prime was different from any arrival Marcus had experienced. Ships from across the Empire came out to escort the 5th Fleet home. When Marcus stepped off his ship, Admiral Theron was waiting. The old warrior stared at Marcus for a long moment, then slowly bowed his head. "I was wrong," Theron said simply. "Your tactics work. I would be honored to learn from you." The throne room celebration was massive. Nobles who had scorned Marcus now cheered his name. Generals who had dismissed him asked for detailed tactical briefings. The Fifth Fleet crews were hailed as heroes. But Marcus noticed something more important than the celebration. He noticed the young Trener officers studying the battle recordings with fascination. He saw the way the military council was already discussing how to integrate human tactics into their training. He saw an empire beginning to change. Queen Zylara found him on the balcony later that night, away from the celebration. "You saved my empire," she said. "Our empire," Marcus corrected. "I'm the king now, remember? Whether I wanted to be or not." Zylara smiled and took his hand. Over the months, their arranged marriage had grown into something real, a partnership built on mutual respect and shared purpose. "What will you do now? You've proven yourself. No one doubts you anymore." Marcus looked out at the crystal city below, at the ships patrolling the sky, at an empire that was finally learning to adapt. "I'm going to propose something that will probably make half the nobles angry again. Not just with humans, but with all the species your empire has looked down on. The Krill invasion was just one threat. There will be others. The only way we survive is by combining our strengths, Trener power, human adaptability, and whatever unique abilities other species bring." Zylara considered this. A year ago, she would have rejected the idea immediately. But she had learned, just as her empire had learned. It won't be easy. Many will resist. Good things never are easy. Marcus squeezed her hand. "But I didn't accidentally become king just to maintain the status quo. I became king to make things better." The next morning, General Corvin requested a private meeting with Marcus. The former champion had been notably absent during the celebrations. When he entered the throne room, Marcus tensed, half expecting another challenge. Instead, Corvin knelt. "I watched your battle against the Krill. I was wrong about you. You fought with honor, just not the honor I recognized. You saved people I care about. My family lived in one of those colonies the swarm attacked." He looked up, his glowing eyes sincere. "You have my loyalty, my king, and I will help convince others that change is necessary." With Corvin's support, the military fell in line. With the military's support, the nobles had to listen. And with everyone listening, Marcus began the work of transforming the Trener Empire into something new, something that combined the best of all species. Years later, historians would mark Marcus Chen's accidental touch of the ceremonial blade as the moment the galaxy changed. Not because a human became a king, but because a king taught an empire that survival requires adaptation, that strength comes in many forms, and that sometimes the greatest leaders are those who never wanted power but rose to meet it anyway. Marcus never stopped being a fighter pilot at heart. He still wore his old jacket over his royal robes, still thought in terms of tactics and strategy. But now he fought for something bigger than himself, for an empire learning to embrace change, for species learning to work together, and for a future where being different wasn't a weakness but a strength. And it all started because he caught a falling glass at a wedding.